Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Awaken Inner Wisdom. I'm starting just a little bit early because I'm going to be streaming also on Instagram. So I'm going to jump over there for a second and get us all set up, and we will get started at 11:11. All right. I'm just putting in here, ask your question in Instagram. Okay, I'm coming back over to you here. And now we are just about ready here. Okay, it's 11:11. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here. Lots of announcements, lots of things going on. The special promotion for the Awaken Inner Wisdom membership is ending at the end of July. So please go over to bethbell.me and apply if you have any desire to go a little bit deeper into a lot of the topics that we talk about. So it's a time right now when people are waking up at various levels, but sometimes it's difficult because we don't always have the support group that we want to have in our lives, because maybe our friends, our spouses, our siblings, people in our inner circle aren't where we are on this awakening journey. And so it's so important that we have support. It's so important that we run together in a tribe. And each week in the Awaken Inner Wisdom membership, we do just that. We talk about a high conscious topic. We dive deeply into it. We get into discussion, and it's a small group. So that's why there's an application process, because we want to bring in people who are really interested in deep diving into their own awakening journey at a whole nother level, and to feel supported, guided, and to really awaken their own inner wisdom. So let's jump into this week's questions. I'm excited. We've got a whole list of them. And if you're watching me live here, please do not hesitate to jump in, ask your question in the comments, and you will get prioritized over any pre-submitted questions. So that's the benefit of watching live. But if you're on replay, no worries. I'll still answer your questions. You can either put them in the comments, or you can go over to bethbell.me/question and ask your question there. It's confidential, and I'll be sure to put it in queue for next week's show. All right, so let's jump in. And of course, if you have any thoughts on any of the questions that I'm answering, don't hesitate to type that in the comments as well. Okay. Question number 1, how do you know if a romantic relationship will last? Well, that doesn't give me a lot of details, but I actually really like the question, because I think that's what everybody wants to know. You meet someone and you're all into them, the chemistry's there, and you have all these ideas about what you want the relationship to be, and you're like, oh, is it going to last? Right? Is this person the one, is oftentimes what people are asking. And what I would encourage is that you forget about all of those ideas that have been embedded in our heads about the one, because I don't think it has to be about lasting. Because if we trust that that person that we're in a relationship with now is here for a reason, and that reason is to help us with our spiritual growth in our ascension, then it in many respects doesn't matter how long it lasts. Because chances are that if you're doing deep dive work with them, it's everlasting. So even if at some point in time you say, yeah, this relationship isn't quite what both of us need anymore, then you may be complete and you move on. And in many ways, it's still lasting, right? So we get these ideas about last. Will something last? Will something be here forever? And nothing is forever except love within ourselves, and the eternity of love that we give and receive to others. So I know that you might want to say, oh, that doesn't really answer the question, because I want to know, is this the person? But really dig deep in there. What are the lessons you called in for growth? And then you're going to be answering your own questions when it comes to that soul contract and whether or not it's complete. And then we can just really feel complete with that person. And it's not about a judgment of how long we dated or or whether they left us or we left them, which is a whole nother topic, right? It's always also about abandonment and about someone leaving and the fears that we have around that. But I'm not picking up that that's necessarily this person's issue in the question. Okay, let's go on to the next one and see what we've got here. Okay. People talk about listening to spirit, getting in touch with my spirit. How do I do that and or know when I'm talking to spirit? Well, this one is really important because we have our ego minds speaking and we have spirit, which is also our higher selves, which is truth, which is our connection to source intelligence. And honestly, sometimes it can be a challenge to know, like, which voice is it? Is it this one or is it this one? Is it that ego voice that's speaking from all of my programs? Or is it my higher self that's speaking from my absolute connection to source and my true north? Now, here's where I think it really gets a little bit tricky. Is there's also the mind, right? The ego mind and the heart. And when we're speaking to spirit, our source connection, we can feel the truth within ourselves. When we're thinking about it, or when we're in that more ego mind program side of it, we're trying to put it into a category, a judgment, a right or a wrong, right? Which comes back to that judgment. Does this make sense? Is this the right thing? And so when we get into spirit, it's that soft spot within us that we go, oh, that message resonates for me. So sometimes I like to call them hits, like, oh, I got a hit. And I mean more like intuitive hit. And one of the reasons why I wear this crown is symbolically to talk about how important it is that we keep our crown chakra open and all of our chakras aligned so that we can bring in information in through our bodies and feel, is that how I say yes or no to something? Because I can feel it deep within me. I'm kind of going here, like, which is more like my third chakra. It's sort of like that gut feeling. Right? So we start to feel these responses in our body as opposed to evaluate them with our mind. And that's really the distinction about spirit. I think we've all had situations when this comes up that we can really anchor in. And a lot of times for me, I know when I know it's spirit, it's an intuitive hit. It's something that's really coming from truth. It's oftentimes when I don't understand the outcome, meaning I go, I just know I need to do this. I don't know why, but I feel it that this is the right thing for me to do. And then I move forward with it. I like to call it intuitive risk taking. It's just another way to sort of frame it, but it means that I got a hit and I'm going to trust that hit because I know that I can always just make another decision. Right? So a lot of times we get in this idea of, oh, it's a good decision or a bad decision, or maybe I shouldn't have done that or should have done that. And I just say, throw all of that out the window, follow spirit, follow your inner guide, your inner wisdom, right? That's the whole show here, awaken inner wisdom. So get more into that heart-centered place, especially when you don't know what the next step is. Another way I like to talk about that is lanterns. If you're on a path, and you're walking along the path and you come upon a fork in the road and there's lanterns, you just pick a lantern and you say, I'm going to follow this light. And then if you need to make another decision, you can follow that light. But when you're following the light and you're following what feels right deep within you, then you're connected to your higher self, to spirit, to your own inner wisdom that you've awakened. It's there. Everybody has it. That's the beauty. But a lot of times we're shoving it down until we have something that happens in our life. Chances are the viewers on this show have already had something that happened that said, maybe there's something a little more here to dig into. And that's why you're listening to the show, because you know that there is a guide, a path to follow, and that your inner wisdom, your higher self, your spirit is actually leading the way. We just need to settle down our minds so that we can listen. All right. If there's any additional thoughts on that or questions for any of the live viewers, I am more than happy to hear about it in the comments. Please make a comment, whether you're watching live on YouTube, Instagram, or on Facebook. So let's dive into the next question. Why do we have to experience heartbreak? Life would be so much easier if we could simply go from one relationship to another or be single without the heartache. Well, yes. The reality is we actually can do that. How can we do that? We have to be in a place in our minds that we're willing to release the ideas that we set forth about ourselves and others. But the reality is that for most of us, we're not in that fully enlightened state where we can just, flick away the mind and all its ideas. And so that's where the beauty is, and that's where the juice is, because if we don't experience some level of heartache or heartbreak, then oftentimes we don't choose to get the lesson. So there's a reason why you're experiencing that feeling within your body. Number one, to get you back into your heart and to really anchor you in to your body here as a human being so that you can actually feel your heart. It happened when you fell in love, right? Everything was like, wah, and you fell in love and you felt your heart, you felt your body. And that's why it's so juicy when we're with other people in our lives that love us, because we can feel that. We can feel that feeling. And so when that feeling is gone because that person's left or we've chosen to break up, it creates this dissonance for us and this feeling of like, I'm alone. When in reality, we're never actually alone. And that love that came from the other person was actually coming from you. They were just a mirror and a reflector to help you experience that. And also to help you experience any perhaps wounds that needed to come forward. Oftentimes it's the wound of separation, right? It's that's everyone's core wound, is being separate from source being God, being the highest level of ourselves in consciousness, being in oneness. It takes lifetimes, oftentimes, for us to get through this process and this ascension and to be able to get to a place where we can just be in our mind connected, right? Because it's our mind. This is our choice. We've come here on planet Earth to have these experiences, being human, having the relationships, having the big love, and having the big heartache and heartbreak so that we can experience ourselves, so that we can experience the ideas that we have around love. Love is eternal and it's within us. And so we don't necessarily have to go through the heartache, but we do, because there's juicy lessons to learn. And each person's lessons are different. We know that we get attracted to others oftentimes based on wounds. So whether it's an abandonment wound or whatever we want to call it, or whatever stories we want to narrate, there's oftentimes programs in there based on our upbringing, based on our ancestral lineage, based on all of the things that we put into our soul contract before coming into this lifetime that we said we wanted to learn about, we wanted to experience, we wanted to have these different emotions come forward. And relationships are the most beautiful, juiciest place for us to learn all of life's lessons. So that's why we're here on Awaken Inner Wisdom, because it's all about our relationships to love and to life in our experience that we chose to have as the co-creator of our life. So if there's any questions on that one, I'm happy to go further on that. Please comment in the questions below. And if not, we'll jump into the next question. Do you think that someone who is gay is a result of genetics or choice? I'm not a geneticist, so I don't have any information on genetics per se, but I will say that my feeling on that, and the intuition that comes to me to say on that, is that this is a very beautiful time in humanity for all types of people to come in. I don't think it has anything to do with genetics, and I don't necessarily think it has anything to do with choice in this dimension. I think before we come into this body, we set our entire soul plan out. Therefore, in that soul plan, we've chosen our parents, we've chosen our ethnicity, we've chosen the culture and community we want to live in, and we've chosen our sexual orientation, which may change throughout our lifetime, in that particular lifetime. So I think that someone who's coming in with the idea that they want to have that experience has chosen it on a soul level, not necessarily that they woke up one day, in puberty and said, oh, I'm just going to choose to have this sexual orientation. I think it was innately within them. So in that sense, you could say, I still wouldn't say it's genetic, but I would say that it's at a cellular level that they know that this is the way that they came to express themselves. And most importantly, that it's the way that they chose to learn some deep lessons about themselves and to help teach others. So whether they're teaching their parents or their siblings or people in their community about a different idea than what we get taught growing up, right? Especially more biblical, more religious terminology has a very hard narrative around this. And when we really go to oneness and we go to source intelligence and we go to an expanded state of consciousness, we actually see that these are all ideations. They're all thought constructs. They don't exist. They're not truths. And that we can come here and express ourselves in whatever way we choose to come and express ourselves. That the rights and the wrongs and the someone should act this way or that way are all lies. They're all part of the illusion. I know sometimes it can be tough when we have this real, hardcore way of thinking about things, but it's a beautiful time. And I think also many weeks ago, there was a question around trans. And again, I think this is such a beautiful time about masculine and feminine energy and how we're being called, each one of us, within ourselves, no matter what your genitalia is, no matter what your expression is, we are all being called to line up and balance our masculine and feminine energy within ourselves. So as a physical woman in this lifetime, I'm working diligently on being in my feminine and being in my masculine all at the same time, and attracting partners, whether it's friendships or lovers or, long-term partnerships where we're helping each other continue that beautiful dance of masculine and feminine. So I think people that come in and are sort of, bucking the system, if you will, presenting a different way of being, are very brave souls who are here to help with a very big purpose, to get through a lot of these constructs about what we think men and women, masculine and feminine, look like. And so I very much welcome this, and I wish and hope for all of humanity to see this from a much higher perspective, to awaken within themselves that these are all constraints that are put into the lens of which we live our lives that are not truth. And the more that we can accept each other and accept how each person expresses themselves out there in the world, what a beautiful world it can be. What a beautiful world that it already is. But it's coming to that place within ourselves that we are not judging ourselves or others for how we choose to express ourselves in this lifetime. All right. I'm open to comments, questions on that. I know that's it can be sometimes a touchy one. I find it fascinating that it's touchy, but it is. And I very much appreciate anyone who's come into this lifetime with that bravery to bring forward that aspect of themselves to really, go against the grain, if you will. And I think that's happening more and more. And so as everyone runs together in a tribe of unity, I think we're going to find just so much beauty coming out of all of those experiences. All right, let's jump in to the next question. Again, if you have more questions or comments, please put them in the comments below. Okay. I am in the life phase. Here, hold on here. I am in the life phase where everyone is very focused on their kids and their families. I value this as well, but also value friends to nourish the soul. What could be some clever ways to meet new people within the current space of regular living and busy family schedules? A couple of things come to mind, actually. I think depending upon where it is that you live. So if you're living in Southern California, you're living in a pocket in a community that has a lot of awakened beings, a lot of people that are on the journey, I would say go out to a coffee shop that has more of a spiritual theme. Go to places, maybe it's to a particular beach or it's a particular place that has others there, especially if you don't have anyone that you can take with you. Go with a really open perspective of, I want to meet new people. And then go there with that. Now, if you're not in Southern California, which I suspect many of you are not, I would still recommend doing that same thing. There is probably somewhere, and when I say spiritual, I don't mean Christianity, I don't mean organized religion. I mean spirit-full places where there's other like-minded people. And if you have to go by yourself, as I said, even better almost in many respects, because then we're putting ourselves in a position to have to ask questions, open conversation, be vulnerable. And so that's going to help open up new opportunities, and it's going to help open up you, because it's so easy for us, myself included, to just get really ingrained in these patterns of what we do in our daily lives, where we go, what we eat, who we talk to. And when we expand and open to new possibilities, which is meeting someone new out on the street or out in a coffee shop, even better. Now, I want to take the emphasis off of anything having to do with spirituality for a second, because there may be people who are, in the middle of some place that just doesn't have anything that's more progressive in spiritual concepts or expansion of consciousness. And so I would say there, you've got some really great opportunity to bring your light and love out into the community in a different way. And that you still go to the coffee shops, but you bring a little bit different approach to it. And maybe there's just something that you want to take out there, something you've been studying, something you've learned, a new concept, and you just go out into the community and you bring up this idea with an open mind, not trying to find another friend or, comrade in the journey, which you may and most likely will, but not with that expectation, to see what can I bring out into this. I guess the word stale comes to mind, but I don't really mean it like that. I just mean that, sometimes that energy can feel really stale when you're bringing newer ideas into a flat consciousness, a place where the ideations are just really locked in and people don't vary from that, because that often happens. Look, I grew up in a small town many, many years ago. And I know now, as I look back, how ingrained everybody was about what the rules are, the guidelines are, the belief systems are. And you follow that narrative until you break out and you go to another community and go, oh, well, they don't do anything like that. They don't see it that way at all. Right. And so the more we travel and we go global and we go to different parts of the world and we get exposed to different types of thinking, we realize that these really are just ideations and thought constructs that someone infused into a culture, into a place that everybody just believes because that's just the way it's always been. So take your new ideas, your new concepts out into the world and find a way to just gently infuse them and ask others, like, hey, here's what I've been thinking about. What do you think about this? Right. And it's just some random stranger, maybe on the street, maybe someone you stopped at a stoplight with and you're waiting to cross the road. We never know when the time is right to be planting more seeds, to break open some very hard constructs about how the world works. And I think we're all here as awakened beings to really break through with our light and to show others that there are different ways of thinking and being. With that said, it also prompts me to say that is what the Awakened Inner Wisdom community membership is all about, is bringing like-minded souls together for us to be able to have high conscious conversations, to feel like we're part of a group, and to be able to express ourselves in an atmosphere where judgment is not the foundation. Because I feel out in society, a lot of times judgment, do you fit in or not fit in? Do you believe what I believe or not? That's really prevalent, especially right now with everything that's going on. So hopefully that's helpful. I would love to see you in the Awaken Inner Wisdom membership if that calls to you, especially the person asking this question, because it's definitely a thing for a lot of awakened beings right now to find more tribe members that they feel see them and accept them and are helping to boost their light as opposed to dampen their light, which is also something that is happening at this time. Okay, if there's anyone listening live here that wants to chime in on these topics, I am more than happy to hear from you in the comments, and we'll go on to the next question. Okay, next question. I was just looking back at that last one. I just want to make sure, like, that I really answer that person's question about, focused on their kids and their families. And I value this as well, but also value friends to nourish the soul. And I think we did cover off on that, which is getting out of your comfort zone, and getting out of your family zone, to do just that, which is nourish your soul and bring your light and love out into the world in a much bigger, broader, community-oriented way. Okay, next question. I'm in this beautiful time in my awakening journey. I have slowed down my life, nourishing my body and spirit, and focused on fun. But the things that used to be fun aren't anymore. Comedy acts, no longer funny. TV, too violent or boring. Concerts with crude or depressing lyrics. Going out for dinner when I don't drink, and most food doesn't make me feel good. As I'm raising my vibration and taking better care of myself, I need to find new things that bring me joy. Have you experienced that, and what are your thoughts? The ascension journey can be really challenging, and it can be challenging for all of those reasons that you just mentioned, that a lot of the things out there just start to not feel as exciting, and the humor is not funny. And yeah, it can get a little bit dark and a little bit unexciting. I don't even know if that's a word. What I would say to that is, I think there's that plateau spot in our ascension journey where we have to be able to, not have to, where we are asked to be able to see all of these elements without judgment, without good or bad, without funny or not funny, and just be in this observational mode of just being and knowing that our happiness comes from within. It doesn't actually come from the comedian. It doesn't actually come from the food we eat. It doesn't actually come from any of these outside elements. That I think that's where spirit comes in and says, ooh, so if you hit this, I mean, like, again, it's not about good or bad, right? But it's like, if you've hit this, then you're at another level of ascension. you're at that level where you're being asked, your higher self is asking you to find a place within you that everything is perfect just as it is, wherever you are, and finding the joy in each moment of each thing. And I know as well how difficult that can be. I struggle with that as well. So we all find different moments, and it's always going to be our mind. It's always going to be ideas. It's always going to be concepts. It's always going to be fantasies that we have about our life. And until we just get really, really happy with the current present moment and all that it entails. And sometimes that means sitting in one place and finding how beautiful it is to experience everything and use your imagination, but everything that's in the room with you. And I don't mean the physical objects. I mean the air. I mean the sparkles. Have you ever had that where your windows shades are open and the sun's shining in, and there's like little dust particles? You know, that sounds kind of funky, but this is what's coming to you. There's just dust particles, and you see the light like sparkling off of them. It's like seeing all of those sparkles that aren't dust, but it's actually energy, and it's loving energy, and envisioning that still existing all around you at all times. And if you really felt into all of those sprinkles, would it matter if you were sitting in your living room, or you were sitting in the Eiffel Tower, or you were sitting in a I want to say a shaman's an ashram? You know, would it matter? Are they all projections of the mind? And so if we really sit deeply within our own peace, then we have this opportunity to experience the elements around us. And what comes to mind to say is even just breath, just breathing the air in and being grateful. I'm going to assume to some degree that anyone watching this has clean air and that they can actually breathe in deep. And when we do, it brings us back to a different place. It brings us out of our minds and brings us into our bodies, brings us into this place of gratitude for just breathing. And it's an interesting dichotomy, because as we do wake up, things fall away in level of importance. The external world is still something we're having an experience with. So it doesn't mean that we can't have our preferences, and it doesn't mean that we don't allow the external world to provide some level of stimulus, and also to help us understand, like, what are my preferences? I don't prefer to sit somewhere with loud music, or I do. So we're still having those interactions, but we're just quieting the mind and the mind's power of how it's maneuvering us through these interactions with our external world, so that the peace is coming from deep, deep, deep within ourselves, and we're projecting that out into these situations. So it is another level of ascension. I just can't say it enough. And it's what, you know, the Jesus, the Buddhas, the Amas, the Dalai Lamas, it's what they're exuding as an example. The Mujis, they're exuding these examples of accepting everything that is as it is, and allowing yourself to still enjoy that moment, no matter where you're at or what you're doing. Hopefully that's helpful. If not, please give me some comments in the comments section, and we'll jump on to the next question. What are some quick techniques to implement while listening to people you disagree with? Okay, good timing on this one, isn't it? There's a lot happening out there in the world, and a lot of people want to disagree on things. So what I would say is listen, just simply listen. You really want to have an awareness about hearing other people's opinions, and also letting it flow right through you. Because they're expressing an opinion doesn't mean you have to put a judgment on it as good, bad, ugly. It's like, oh, that's where they are. And that doesn't need to have a label of smart, dumb, educated, uneducated, right or wrong. It just is like, oh, and I wonder if I could learn something from their perspective. So we get really curious, like, oh gosh, that's so interesting. I'm curious, how did you get to that idea, right? And asking more questions about them. But innately, a lot of times what happens is when we're listening to someone that we disagree with, right? Someone that just doesn't have the same viewpoint as us, we immediately start building our own narrative to have a response. And that's where we want to say, ooh, no, I don't need to have an immediate response. And if they're asking you for an immediate response and you're feeling a bit triggered and you're feeling a bit like, I totally disagree with that, you can take a big breath and say, I'd like to just sit with that for a moment. I hear what you're saying, and I do have a different opinion, but I'd like to understand more about what it is that you're thinking and why. And when you do that and you try to understand more about their opinion and their thoughts and why they think it, look, they could go into full selling mode, like, I got to convince this person of this, or they could feel heard and they could feel really validated. But either way, if you stay unattached to what they're saying, it's their truth. It doesn't have to be your truth. And you don't have to project your truth onto them, right? So the beauty can be in this space in between where you just allow it to be and you listen with intention to understand their perspective, which doesn't mean you're trying to understand it so you can agree with them. You're trying to understand it so you can know more about them and honor that they have an opinion and that they're coming from a different perspective. Something comes to mind. See if I can say it in the way that it came out. I recently went to Michael Franti. Amazing. I just absolutely love that man. His lyrics are incredible. His message is incredible, and his ability to get people to interact in the whole place is incredible. And you actually I felt in love with all of the strangers around me by the end of this whole thing. And his phrase was something along the lines of, if you knew their story, you'd love them too. Really just acknowledging, wow, like if we really, and I'm not saying you can, and I'm not saying you should know everybody's story. It's not feasible. I'm not suggesting that for every single person, but I'm just suggesting that you realize that there are a lot of stories that are behind each and every person. And the more we can come at this with just curiosity and also reflect on, well, if my opinion is the exact opposite of theirs, what are my stories? How did I get my narrative to be built in this way with my stories and my experiences and my baggage that I've got? And, where are my values and where are my beliefs? And are all of those really ultimately true? Is this something I really need to be falling on my sword for? Whatever that is, right? And really understanding your own storylines and why someone else's storylines might be triggering you or showing up in your field for you to be witnessing. Because there's something in there. You've asked them on a spirit level, you've asked them to come in and to provide some information for you. And for you to be able to have a reaction, for you to be able to have a feeling, for you to be able to have a relationship with them, even if it's a fleeting one. And isn't it always about wanting to see and be seen, hear and be heard, so that we can feel like we're really participating in this human experience and not just being, shoved under the rug or told to be quiet or that our beliefs are wrong? And just finding more joy and understanding what it is that we believe ourselves and why, And maybe there's some room there. Maybe at the end of a conflict or someone you have a different view with, maybe you'll find that you agree on more than what you disagree on. And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? To leave a conflict, to leave a conversation with a, wow, we really connect on this. And I think that this is unity. I think that should be our focus as we walk out the door every day, is how can I be in union with others as opposed to at odds? How can I find what we share in common more than what we disagree on? So I don't know if this person was specifically speaking about politics, and I don't bring in a lot about politics on this show, but I will say that because we're at such an interesting time with politics, that if you take the approach that I just spoke about, you are going to learn so much about other people, about yourself. And if you shine the light for unity and you come at conversations around unity, as opposed to, I mean, look, we're not at a time where we're cheering for a sports team here. I think what we're cheering for is humanity and unity. And let's have those discussions. How can we get closer to unity and not be part of this narrative around parties? And yeah, these things are distractions for us. We need to be in the unity consciousness and really be talking about that. And how can we help humanity on an individual community level? What difference can I make right here, right now with my people? And that's where the energy really should be spent. Okay. Thank you for asking the question. And we're going to jump into the next question, and we're almost down to the hour here. So let's see. The next question: is the 7-year itch in relationships a real thing? Well, it seems to be, doesn't it? A lot of people at 7 years do have a splitting. And so there must be something to it. I haven't looked at any data per se, but I would say that, once we're in relationships for a significant period of time, we've kind of built a dossier against someone oftentimes. Like all the things that they did, they didn't do, especially women, sorry, women, but a lot of us have photographic memories about what men have done or not done and how they made us feel. And so there's like this dossier that comes up, and at 7 years, you're kind of like either done or you're like, I'm really invested in this and I want to learn and grow. And so I think that itch part is, maybe it's a good thing, because it's a recommitment to yourself. How focused am I on my growth and development with this person? I'm not saying you should get married or I should say get divorced at 7 years or break up at 7 years. I'm just saying that if you're getting the itch, I think there's some big questions to ask yourself that can help you either to grow and expand, or maybe you do say, hey, our soul contract is up. I'm not able to grow anymore in this relationship, or you're choosing not to grow, or you're choosing, or I'm choosing, right? But you're just like looking at what are the choices here. And if someone doesn't want to grow with you spiritually and you do, then maybe that's a really good thing, that 7-year itch. If it's real or not, we don't know. But I think it's just a point in life where you spend a significant amount of time and you do want to either rip up the dossier or help your significant other with their dossier and ask them to help you. Like, hey, I realize that I have not been, whatever it is, a good communicator, or I haven't done X, Y, or Z, and I want to change that within myself. So the 7-year itch can be a really great thing. In fact, maybe the new thing to do is to take at 7 years that you really do the 7-year scratch. Like, hey, honey, let's scratch the surface of this foundation that we've built. And let's really feel into and recommit to why we're in each other's lives. And then if there's a place where you go, this isn't where we feel we're supposed to be, not supposed to be, but just like, when the soul contract is complete, if you don't sever the contract and move forward, you will eventually, and normally it happens in some of the worst possible ways, because someone gets to a point of cheating on someone, or there's all these terrible things that happen, or someone gets really ill, or there's an accident, or there's different ways that spirit will come in and say, hey, you didn't get, you ignored the itch, you didn't scratch it, and now we gotta give you a gaping wound, right? And so maybe we just take that whole concept and just talk about it being a scratch, like the 7-year scratch, and really dig in on what it is that you want to change about yourself and the relationship to grow and to have a better relationship with that individual that you're in the relationship with. All right. Couple last announcements. We are just down to the end of the show. I so appreciate all the questions that you guys submit each week. I love answering them. I love giving insights. And I do encourage you to apply for the Awaken Inner Wisdom membership. But more importantly, perhaps, is if you haven't done the State of the Heart assessment, please do. There's a link down below, and it's bethbell.me. You can fill out your State of the Heart. The assessment will give you very specific results to which stage of the heart you are in. And also some tips, tools, and techniques will come your way over time in the emails. And we'll learn more about you, and you'll learn more about me, and we can support one another in such a beautiful way. Now, if you're also interested in going deeper in some of the concepts that I talk about, there's great stories, transformational storytelling in Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics. There's also the Awakening and Healing Handbook, which is filled with a plethora of different tips, tools, techniques. And there's also the Psychedelic Resource Guide. So if you know of someone who may be interested in plant-based medicines, spiritual medicines, and looking for information and insights, it's an incredible guide to help you, the Psychedelic Resource Guide. And also the Herpes Handbook. So it's obviously about herpes, but it's also about viruses of the mind. So I would highly encourage you, if you know someone or maybe you meet someone, I know that handbook will give you lots of information that will be very helpful in navigating how to open up difficult conversations around lots of mind viruses, not just herpes. So please don't hesitate to go check that out on bethbell.me. All right. I so appreciate you. Please put comments in the, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And if you want something a little more private, you can go to bethbell.me/question and enter your question there. All right. Until next week, Sundays, 11:11, I'm wishing you much bliss and love on the journey. Namaste.